Ladies and gentlemen, do I have a good one for you today? The Gktech high clearance lower control arms. Now, what do you get in the box? A bunch of metal goods, starting with the lock stops, which just so happen to be adjustable for your pleasure. You also get the accessories to actually lock the lock stops. You get dust boots for the PTFE line bearings, and lastly, the arms themselves. These are a direct OEM replacement and are made from 16mm thick 4130 chromoly steel. These come in 3 different sizes, starting with a 0 to 25mm, 20 to 45mm, finally the 40 to 65mm Hot Boy super wide version. With a 25mm of adjustment on these arms comes from the rose joints as the arms themselves are fixed. Let's get to getting and install these puppies. Start by removing the tension rod nuts, which there are appropriately 2 of. Remove the bolts and washers. Now let that tension rod dangle. Remove the split pin, then the ball joint nut itself, then give her a little tappy and she should pop right on out. Move on to the inner LCA nut and bolt. Now, remove the whole LCA and give it to the guy that steals all your scrap metal anyway. Let's talk extensions, and no, not male enhancement. The maximum safe extension on these is going to be 79.5mm or 3.12 inches, measuring from the base of the arm to the end of the rose joint. We essentially want you to buy the correct size and run minimum extension on the heim so that it's threaded all the way in for maximum strength. Now, we do offer different ball joints to suit different cars, so choose the one you need at checkout and rock on. To install those, remove the ball joint nut, then the dust boot, then head to a press, pop the ball joint in, support the arm from the bottom, and press her on down until it bottoms out. Feeling I will never know. Anyway, flip it over and install the circlip from the top so the ball joint stays where it's supposed to. Install the dust boot, then the garter spring. You want these balls to remain protected from harsh environments. Now install the LCA, then the inner nut and bolt, then seat the ball joint into the knuckle, and then install the ball joint nut itself. Tighten, then torque to spec, which is 71 to 86 Newton meters or 52 to 64 foot-pounds. Now, move on and torque the inner nut to the specs shown on the screen. Now make damn well sure your bearing is straight up and down and not cocked to the left or right. Central, people. That means the middle. Now tighten the locking nut, and that's all she wrote for that part. Install the tension rod back into place, push the 2 bolts through, then the washers and nuts, then tighten them down, and then torque to the specs shown right here on the screen. Let's move on to the lock stops. To install these, put the shims down first, then install the lock stop, then washers and bolts. Now lift the bolts up slightly and sneak the shims in on the bottom. Then put the washer and nuts on, and once hammed tight, it's time to adjust how much fun you actually want to have. If you like to party, slam that sucker all the way in. If you think drifting is stupid, don't. Now we do recommend adjusting so the tie rod end stops before the rack bottoms out. If the rack is bottoming out, that causes all sorts of issues you don't want to have. Once that is dialed, tighten and torque to the specs shown on the screen. And that's it. That's all. They're installed. These guys are COVID-19 board and on YouTube. Give them a follow. And if you can't install these parts, have a professional do it or reach out with any questions. This has been Officer Dan, Johnny Caps, and Non-Octo Zach with another Gktech how-to. Peace.